All right, let's jump right in. We're going to talk about something every single one of us deals with, managing our own minds. And, specifically, what in the world do we do with those thoughts we wish we could just hit delete on? You know this feeling, right? It's 3 in the morning, you're staring at the ceiling, replaying some dumb thing you said earlier. Or maybe it's that little voice that pops up right before a big presentation, just whispering all your doubts. It feels like these thoughts just come out of nowhere. The best way to think about these thoughts is, well, they're like uninvited guests. The kind that show up without calling, put their feet up on your coffee table, and just absolutely refuse to leave. So picture your mind as this room. Most of the time, it's a pretty great place to be. But then, sometimes, it just fills up with this static, this background noise of intrusive, repetitive, and usually negative thoughts that just will not be quiet. And that's their whole deal, isn't it? They are not polite guests you invited over for dinner. No, they barge in, they completely overstay their welcome, and even when you think you finally kicked them out, they have this nasty habit of showing right back up. I mean, it seems like it should be simple. If you have a bad file on your computer, you just drag it to the trash can. Boom, gone. So why can't we do that with a thought? Well, it turns out there's a really specific reason our brains just don't work that way. And here it is. This is the big idea. You cannot fight a thought into submission. Your mind doesn't have a delete key. What it does have is a management system. So the goal isn't to erase thoughts, it's to learn how to manage them, and crucially, how to replace them. Okay, let's dig into this a little bit more. Why is our very first instinct to just fight back against a bad thought? Why is that actually the worst thing we can possibly do? Now check this out. Look at the contrast here. When you wrestle with a thought, you are giving it your full attention, you're feeding it energy, and that just makes it stronger. It's literally like trying to put out a fire with gasoline. But the moment you just accept its presence, without judging it, you completely take away its power. The pressure drops, your energy is freed up. So that's step 1, stop fighting. Okay, so if fighting is out, what can we do? This is where our toolkit comes in. And these are simple, science-backed techniques you can use pretty much anytime, anywhere. So the very first tool is all about creating a little bit of space. Right now, when a negative thought pops up, you probably feel like you are that thought. But what if you weren't? This is such a small shift in language, but the impact is huge. Saying I am anxious makes anxiety your identity. But saying a thought of anxiety has appeared, well, that turns you into an observer. You're the sky. And the thought is just a cloud passing by. You're separate from it. And that little bit of separation, that gives you all the power. So now you've got some distance, you're the observer, not the thought itself. From that powerful position, the next question is, how do you take away its sting? This one is fantastic. And it's actually rooted in neuroscience. When you label a thought or an emotion, just give it a name. You activate the logical part of your brain, and you calm down the brain's little alarm system, the amygdala. Just saying, okay, that's the comparison thought again, is like turning down the volume on your internal panic button. So sometimes just observing and naming isn't quite enough because there are just too many thoughts at once. When your mind feels totally cluttered, you can do what's called a mental dump. And it is exactly what it sounds like. For just 2 to 5 minutes, you get all those swirling, messy thoughts out of your head and onto a piece of paper. You don't have to organize them or make sense of them. Just get them out. It externalizes all that noise and clears up your mental space almost instantly. Negative thoughts often trigger a physical stress response in your body. This technique is a direct shortcut to calm that down. A slow, controlled breath basically sends a message to your nervous system that you are safe. Come on, let's just try it real quick. Inhale for 6. Hold for 2, and a long, slow exhale for 6. You do that just a few times and you will feel a genuine difference. What if I told you that you could completely break the cycle of a negative thought in less than a minute? It's called the focus shift. And it works because our brain's working memory is, it's surprisingly limited. It literally can't actively focus on 2 things at the exact same time. So, for just 45 seconds, consciously put all of your attention on something else. The feeling of your feet on the floor, the sound of a fan, the details of a pen on your desk. The negative thought just can't compete, and poof, its cycle is broken. Okay, so we've looked at a bunch of individual tools, but how do we actually put them all together into a process, something we can use every single day? So here it is, a simple, repeatable formula. When that negative thought shows up,
Number 1, observe it from the outside. 2, identify it by giving it a label. 3, release it, either write it down or breathe it out. 4, calm your physical system down with breathing or a focus shift. And finally, step 5, and this is probably the most important of all, you have to replace it.
See, you can't just leave an empty space where that bad thought was. Nature abhors a vacuum, and so does your mind. If you leave it empty, another negative thought is just going to rush in to fill it. You have to be intentional. You have to actively choose a better thought to put in its place. Something like, this is just the thought, it's not reality. Or, I am in control of how I respond. And that brings us to the final and maybe most powerful shift in perspective. What if these negative thoughts aren't enemies we have to defeat? What if they're just signals? Signals that maybe you're stressed, or you're tired, or that some old belief is being triggered. When you start seeing them as signals, you can choose to respond instead of just reacting. And when you can do that, well, that's when they truly lose their power over you.